Now, on February 7th, the Biden administration told the Supreme Court that it has the intent to let the coronavirus public health emergency expire on May 11th, in about 2 months from now. And therefore, it is now moot regarding the ongoing case in the Supreme Court over a Trump-era border protection. In a filing submitted to the High Court, Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar wrote, absent other relevant developments, the end of the public health emergency will, among other consequences, terminate the Title 42 orders and moot this case. Moreover, the government has also recently announced its intent to adopt new Title 8 policies to address the situation at the border once the Title 42 orders end. Now, this background, because that's a Title 42, blah, blah, blah. Let me give you a little background on all of this. The Trump administration invoked Title 42 at the border as a public health emergency that prevented anyone from applying for asylum because the United States government did not want anyone coming to the country with COVID. That's what Trump said. We don't want more COVID in the country. We're going to call a public health emergency. No one could apply for asylum. And it was obviously used to limit asylum at the border because many people traveled by plane to the United States every day, and there was no public emergency for COVID or people traveling by airplane through the airports. So obviously this whole Title 42 was a guise to prevent people from applying for asylum. And the only way people were able to ultimately apply for asylum was jump the fence, go through the wall, enter without inspection, and then apply for asylum. So the whole system is screwed up. So in place of preventing people from applying for asylum at the border because of COVID, the Biden administration is putting in a new rule that was announced on February 21st. All right, so they're ending the Proclamation 42, no more public health emergency. We're not going to prevent people from applying for asylum based on COVID. But now the new rule that they're putting into effect will deny asylum to anybody who shows up at the United States southern border without first seeking protection in a country they pass through. So this new rule means severe limitations on asylum for anyone fearing for their life back home, unless they're already a national of Mexico, because anybody who is not Mexican had to step foot in Mexico in order to get to the border to apply for asylum. And if you step foot in Mexico to get to the border to apply for asylum, under these new rules, you have traveled through a third country to reach the United States. So it's going to basically prevent everybody on the southern border from applying for asylum, even if you jump the fence, go through the fence, dig under the fence. If you entered without inspection through the southern border, you're going to be barred from applying for asylum because you touched ground in Mexico first. They're going to say, apply for asylum in Mexico. So this new rule is almost certainly going to face legal challenges. Donald Trump tried to pass a similar rule in 2019, and it was in appeals courts for years. Now, the new rule proposed by the Biden administration has to go through a 30-day public comment period before it can formally be adopted. If adopted, it will remain in place for a minimum of 2 years. Administration officials expect the rule to take effect on the day the Title 42 authority expires, which is May 11th. The Homeland Security and Justice Departments argued that surging numbers of migrants left them little choice. They anticipate illegal crossings to climb to between 11,000 to 13,000 per day. 11 to 13,000 people jumping the fence, going through the fence, under the fence, if no action is taken on Title 42. So if you entered the country without inspection recently, and if you do enter the country without inspection through the southern border, you're going to be put in removal, and your only choices to win your removal case is apply for asylum within a year, or argue you were paroled into the United States and be married to a U.S. citizen in a bona fide marriage. Those are everybody's choices if they come across the border illegally. But asylum is going to be taken away from you, so you better act fast, or you're going to be out of luck. Now, a notice in the Federal Register says the exceptions to the proposed rule will be made for people with an acute medical emergency, imminent and extreme threat of violent crimes such as murder, rape, or kidnapping, being a victim of human trafficking, or other extremely compelling circumstances. Children traveling alone will also be exempted. If you enter the country without inspection, after this rule takes into account, everyone's going to claim, if I go home, I'm going to be murdered, I'm going to be raped, I'm going to be kidnapped. It could be everybody's asylum claim. The rule essentially calls on prospective migrants to follow legal pathways to apply for asylum, such as using Customs and Border Patrol One app while waiting in their home country, through which prospective migrants can schedule an appointment to apply to appear at a border entry point to apply for asylum. Government wants you to stay in your country, download an app, apply for asylum on the app, and when you get called, if you ever get called, then you figure out a way to make it to the border in Mexico. United States officials insist the proposed measure is different from Trump's. Trump said, if you touch ground in Mexico, you can't apply in U.S., no exceptions, mainly because there's room for exceptions, because the Biden administration has made other legal pathways available, and particularly the humanitarian parole for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans, and Ukrainians, which we talked about. And the administration said migrant encounters from those countries have plummeted since the announcement, and you're using it as a model for dealing with immigration in the future. But immigration advocates have criticized attempts to limit asylum applications at the southern border, saying that a migrant's not going to sit in their home country waiting to be called on an application they downloaded on an app. Meanwhile, their life's in danger. They're running for their lives, and they got to wait for months, years, if they ever get called, waiting for it to get called by, Customs and Border Patrol to come to the border. Now, supposedly, I don't know this for a fact, but supposedly what I read in the news is that Costa Rica and Mexico supposedly have, of all of the countries that you would try to, cover in Central America, that Costa Rica and Mexico, which is actually Mexico, it's North America, but anybody south of the border, supposedly has the most robust asylum systems for asylum seekers traveling north. But both countries, however, have been overwhelmed by the surging number of asylum applications in recent years. Now, the new rule comes as President Biden faces Republican-controlled House, determined to make immigration a key issue as they attempt to portray the southern border as completely out of control. So we will see what happens, but I would not personally expect a breakthrough on any significant immigration law changes. I would not expect any breakthrough on any amnesty in the near future. And my expectation is that this new rule that prevents you from applying for asylum after May 11th, if you touch ground in Mexico and you're not a Mexican, it's probably going to go in the courts and be held in abeyance while it makes its way through the court system, which could be years and years. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Thanks for watching. For more Brad Show Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.